Welcome to Master the Science of Miracles, where we will explore the ancient science of transforming your ideas into your physical reality. Join us on a thrilling adventure that pushes beyond the limits of conventional beliefs about what it truly means to be human, as we unravel the truth about how powerful you really are. In each episode, we will discover the elements of the reliable, repeatable, step-by-step process for making the miraculous and ordinary part of your life. This is your portal to the extraordinary. So let the adventure begin. And now, here's your host, Ron Matthews.
Welcome back. I'm so happy to be with you here again today. What I want to talk about today is a bit of a review of some things I talked about in previous episodes. What I'm going to be focusing on right now today is the personal demon demolisher. Now, this is the part of Master the Science of Miracles that was included in order for us to be able to deal with some of the emotional blocks that inevitably come up whenever we start to move towards our desired outcome. If you recall from episode 4, I talked about the process of creating a vivid, multi-sensory thought form of your desired outcome, and then turning that thought form into a video. If you don't remember, then go back and watch episode 4 again. It's all in there. Inevitably, what happens is when we begin to move towards an outcome that we desire that stretches our limits, or the limits of our personal beliefs and values, we're going to experience some form of cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is simply some form of anxiety we experience when we are stating something that violates our personal beliefs and values. Now, how did those personal beliefs and values come about? Well, if you recall, I think in episode 2 or 3, I forget which, I talked about the different brainwave states. We're at the beta brainwave state right now. This is the normal conscious waking state. Throughout any 24-hour day, we all go through the other brainwave states, and they are the alpha state, which is the state you're in when you're falling asleep, when you're waking up, when you're daydreaming, when you're in light meditation or light hypnosis. Then there is the theta brainwave state, and that's the state you're in when you're asleep and dreaming. It's the state you're in when you're in deep meditation. And finally, there's the delta brainwave state, and that's the state where we are in deep, dreamless sleep. Now, from birth until about 3 or 4 years old, children spend most of their time in the delta brainwave state. And you can tell because that's when they sleep the most. And if any of you parents who have had toddlers remember, when your kids were 1 or 2 or 3 years old, they'd fall asleep someplace. You could pick them up, throw them over your shoulder, bring them home, put them to bed. They'd never wake up. From the ages of 4 until about 8, children are primarily in the theta brainwave state. Same state they're in that you and I are in when we're asleep and dreaming. And then from 8 until about 14, they're in the alpha brainwave state. Now, why is this so important? It's important because every single one of these deeper brainwave states, delta, theta, and alpha, are hypnotic states of mind. And that means that even though children and we are unconscious, we have no conscious awareness in the delta state, our subconscious is completely awake, alert, and taking everything in. Psychologists now believe that about 75% of what people are going to learn in their whole lives, they learn between the ages of birth and 5 years old. And most of this Learning is unconscious, both the stuff that serves us and the stuff that is not so useful. So any biases, any prejudices, any fears, any non-resourceful beliefs that our parents, our aunties and uncles, our television shows, our internet, we were exposed to during that time goes in very, very deeply into the subconscious level. In the same way, from the ages of 4 until about 8, children are in the theta brainwave state. And once again, even though it's a subconscious state, our subconscious is fully awake and alert. It takes in everything we're exposed to. And then from 8 till about 14, children are in the alpha brainwave state. Why it's significant that these are all hypnotic brainwave states is that everything that we perceive goes in as a post-hypnotic suggestion. So anyone who has used a hypnotist, hypnotherapist, to quit smoking, to lose weight, I promise you, if you were able to be hypnotized, and during that time you were in the hypnotic state, your therapist was implanting post-hypnotic suggestions to help you to lose weight or to change your behavior, eating behaviors, to change your relationship to tobacco, so that the changes happened in what seemed to be an automatic fashion. They seemed automatic because they were in your subconscious. Now, here are some of the things that people in our society pick up during our childhood that may not be resourceful. Things like wealthy people are probably dishonest. That's how they got their money. Now, what do you say when you hear that? You say, cancel, cancel. Remember that that episode? So I'm going to state a whole bunch of things that you and I may very well have taken in our childhood that become part of our beliefs and part of our values. I just covered one. Wealthy people are dishonest. Oh, that disease runs in our family. Cancel, cancel. So if you express with some disease, diabetes, cancer, lupus, whatever, cancel, cancel, all of that. Your belief system is, well, that runs in my family, so of course I'm going to have it. So please say cancel, cancel. These are subconscious beliefs that are going on in our minds right now, and because they're subconscious, we are completely unaware of them. Anytime we begin to make a change in our lives that challenges our subconscious values, we're going to experience cognitive dissonance. Guaranteed. It can't not happen. Hence, the personal demon demolisher. So as you go through the process of deciding what your desired outcome is, what is it that you most desire to do, to be, or to have? If any of those things violate your subconscious values and beliefs, you're going to start to feel uncomfortable as you begin to work towards them. Now, the first part of the process is that you decide what you want. Next, you create a vivid, multi-sensory thought form of what your life is going to be like when you have achieved your desired outcome. And if you're going to have an episode of cognitive dissonance, that's when it's going to happen. As you begin moving toward this wonderful thing you've created. I desire to be making $10,000 a month by doing whatever it is you love to do. As you begin to move towards that, you're going to begin to be haunted by your personal demons. These demons are the demons of, I'm not good enough, my family doesn't deserve that, we don't do those kinds of things, rich people are bad, cancel, 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 cancel. But as you begin to convert your thought form into the mental video I talked about, where you imagine you're sitting in a movie theater watching your life as it's going to be when you've achieved your desired outcome, you may experience cognitive dissonance then. Even though you may be doing it at the alpha state, as you begin to enjoy the process of living in this memory from the future that we talked about in a previous episode, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Anxiety, guilt, fear, anger, resentment, whatever. These are all the personal demons that we all carry around. And by the way, when you create your multi-sensory thought form, when you create your desired outcome, it needs to be specific. When you create, when you begin to create this multi-sensory thought form of your desired outcome, and you begin to feel this cognitive dissonance, it's important that before you even begin this process, your desired outcome is stated in specific terms. Not just, I want to have more money. How much more money? When? Why? If you don't have a strong why for why you want it, you will not follow through. And ask yourself the question, how is me achieving this desired outcome going to benefit other people? These are all things that are going to make your desired outcome more believable and more achievable. As you begin to go through this process, which I'm laying out for you, and as you begin to feel these personal demons popping up, this cognitive dissonance popping up, the first thing I want you to do is to stop and rate how big it is on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'm going to use the personal demon of guilt. That is, I feel guilty because I want to have more money. I feel guilty because I want to be in a great relationship. I feel guilty because I want to be healthier than my parents were. And even though feeling guilty about this is irrational, these are emotionally driven responses. So take a piece of paper and write down on a scale of 1 to 10, how big is the guilt? I'm going to stay with guilt. Your issue may be fear, it may be anger, it may be resentment, jealousy, whatever it is, you use your personal demon. Because guilt is such a widely felt emotion in our society, I'm going to stick with that. So as you write down, how big is it? Scale of 1 to 10. 1 is you feel no guilt at all. 10 is you're overcome with guilt. You almost can't function. Write it down. Then, the next thing I want you to do is to first hold a pair of points with your fingertips. I'm going to show you in a moment. They're called neurovascular points. And they're located all throughout your head and your neck and upper torso for the most part. So the first set is this pair. They're both right in front of the opening of your ear, like I'm pointing to now. One is here and one is here on both sides. And to hold them, you're just going to touch them with your thumbs lightly, like this. That's the first part. The next part is to take your fingertips, the pads of your fingers, and you're going to just hold, you're going to press gently and hold these points directly above your eyeballs. If you feel around here, you'll feel a little bit of a bump or protrusion here. It's called the main frontal eminence. When you touch and hold these points and these points together, you begin to affect a change in the blood flow in your brain. So what I want you to do is, as you have these feelings come up, the guilt comes up, in our case here, the guilt comes up. I rate it, it's a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm just using this as an example. I'm going to touch here, I'm going to touch and hold like this. And then as you touch and hold, I want you to focus on that feeling you experienced. In this case, it's guilt. And as you hold these points and focus on the guilt, I want you to take 5 or 6 nice, long, slow, deep breaths like this. Now, I'm only going to do 2 or 3, just for the sake of time. But hold for at least 6 breaths. As you're holding, you'll begin to feel pulses forming here and pulses forming here. And if you continue to hold, as those pulses form, the pulses are going to synchronize. And when that happens, the process has completed. Now, what happens when you do that? When you hold these points while focusing on whatever the stressor is you're experiencing, in this case we're talking about guilt. The blood, when you feel this guilt in your brain, flows into the central part of your brain called the amygdala. That's where the part of the brain where fight-flight lives. So when you hold these points like I just showed you, you focus on the feeling and you take a few nice, long, slow, deep breaths. When those pulses synchronize, it signals that the blood in your brain has flowed out of the amygdala and into the frontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that makes us human. When the blood flows there, that part of the brain activates, and now you can deal with your feeling, in this case, deal with the guilt, like a human, rather than a squirrel or a raccoon or whatever, because this is the animal part of the brain. After you've held the neurovasculars for however long it takes for the pulses to form and to synchronize, then write down how big is the guilt now. Hopefully, if it was a 7 or an 8, now it's a 4 or a 5. If it's a 2 or less, you're done. You can go back to the video of your mind and restart the process, knowing fully well that if it happens again, you can use this process again. If it is higher than a 2, the next thing to do is to use what is commonly referred to as EFT. That stands for the Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. If you go on Google and you search for EFT or tapping, you're going to get a million hits or more. I'm going to lead you through the entire process of how to use EFT for an emotional demon, a personal demon. So the first part of the process is to probe around your upper torso. And you're going to find spots that hurt. They're not going to cause you any damage, but they hurt because they're a class of points. They're called neurolymphatic reflex points. I'm not going to go into what they are, but when they are sore, that means they need to be massaged vigorously. Now, as you find these points, and you'll find them right here where the shoulder joins the pectoral part of the chest here, on both sides. You'll find them along here. If you go to your breastbone, your sternum, and you find the spaces in between the ribs, they will be sore. Any of those sore spots are ones I want you to rub vigorously, but not yet. We're going to craft what's called a set-up phrase. The set-up phrase is a way of stating the fact that you have, in this case, this guilt, and yet you deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive yourself. Now, this is important because if this feeling of guilt is deeply seated, it becomes what is called a psychological reversal. A psychological reversal simply talks about what I just told you, that these emotions are deep in our subconscious. So when we acknowledge that they are there, and we state that even though we have these things, we deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive ourselves, telling our subconscious that we're still okay even though we have this guilt. And when you do that by massaging these points, you're causing your subconscious to accept what you're saying. And I think episode 3, I talked about the fact that every word we say is taken by our subconscious as a command or an imperative. Both the good things and the bad things. So go back and watch that to review. So when I rub these sore spots, and I say, and this is what I want you to say, I'm going to use guilt. Whatever you're feeling, you use that. So I'm going to rub these points. I'm going to repeat 3 times, even though I have this guilt about wanting to be more wealthy. For instance, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. And then twice more. Even though I have this guilt about wanting to make more money, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. One more time. Even though I have this guilt about wanting to be wealthier, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. Once the setup phrase is completed 3 times, we're going to create a reminder phrase that we're going to use as we tap through all of the points. And you'll notice that I do EFT a little bit differently than others do. First of all, for the meridians that exist on both sides of the body, I tap both sides. I also use more points than most EFT practitioners do. I actually pull in all of the acupuncture meridians in my method. So I'm going to take my glasses off for a moment. I'm going to demonstrate and talk about each point, how to locate it, where it is. Then I'm going to demonstrate an interim process called the 9 gamut process, and then go through the tapping again. Once I've demonstrated this whole process, then I'm going to go through an entire tapping sequence for this guilt. Okay? So let me take my glasses off. The first point we're going to be dealing with is right on the crown of the head, right here at the top of the head. We're going to tap, 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 tap. Next points are right here in the inner corners of the eyebrows, right here. We're going to tap, 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 tap. For most cases, I'm using 2 fingers. Don't need to know why, just accept the fact that 2 is better than 1. Next point is at the sides of the eye, right at the corner of the eye here. I'm going to tap, 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 tap. Next is right at the bottom of the eye at this ridge called this subocular ridge. I'm going to tap right there. Tap, 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 tap. Now, this is the first point you may not have seen before. And guess what? It's the point we just held as one of the neurovasculars. It's also an acupuncture point. It's right here in front of the ear, on both sides of my head. So I'm going to put my middle fingers here on the point, like this. My index fingers are right next to it. Tap, 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 tap. Next points are at the flare of the nose, right here. I'm going to take my fingers like this and tap, 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 tap. Next is between the nose and the upper lip, right here. Tap, 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 tap. Then, between the lower lip and the tip of the chin, right here in this little dent. Tap, 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 tap. The next ones are right where the collarbone joins the breastbone, right here. And when I do this, I cross my hands. This is a good, when you can cross your hands doing stuff like this, it's a good idea to do that. You don't have to, I always do. I'm going to put my fingers right here where the collarbone joins the sternum and tap, 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 tap. Now these are in my body, so I thump. And you're going to find that I tap harder than most practitioners do because I want to get the energy in there. Where was I? Right here. Next is this many fingers, the width of my fingers here below my armpit, where my pinky is right here on both sides. When you bend your elbows and protrude your thumbs and tap, 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 they hit right there. Next is directly below the nipples, on the crease right here. For ladies, it's your bra line. For guys and ladies, it's this crease between your abdominal muscles and your pectoralis major muscles. Right here, I'm going to tap with all my fingers. Tap, 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 tap. This is a thump. Thump, 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 thump. Next, I'm going to tap all the cuticles of both fingers, just like this, on both hands. I'm going to take my fingers like this and go tap, 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 tap. Other side, tap, 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 tap. Next is what is called the karate chop point. It's this meaty part of your hand right here. And to tap this, I want you to hold your hand right over your solar plexus. And as you hold it over your solar plexus, either like this or like this if it's easier for you, either way, it does not matter. Tap, 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 all your fingers. Tap, 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 tap. And tap, 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 tap. Next is a point right here between the tendons of my pinky finger and my ring finger, right here in my hand. I'm going to tap those on both sides, tap, 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 and tap, 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 tap. Almost done with the points. Then I'm going to go right to the middle of my breastbone, between my solar plexus and the suprasternal notch. Right here, I'm going to thump, 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 thump. And finally, as you stand up and let your hands hang naturally, the tips of your middle fingers are going to touch a certain point in the middle of your thigh. To thump this, you need to bend your knees just a little bit and use your fingers and thump, 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 thump. Those are all the points and the major part of the EFT process. Once you have tapped through that whole sequence at least once, then it gets weird. Like it isn't weird already, right? Once you have gone through the entire tapping sequence, all the points, then it gets a little bit weird, as if it isn't weird already, right? This next process, Gary Craig called the 9-gamut process. I have no idea why he called it that. What we're going to do is we're going to tap on either hand these points I just told you about, either hand. As you tap them, tap, 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 you're going to keep tapping. You're going to close your eyes. I'm going to turn back to the camera here so we can see closer. You're going to close your eyes. You're going to open your eyes. You're going to look hard down to the left without moving your head. And move your eyes back to center. Look hard down to the right without moving your head. Move your eyes back to center. Then move your eyes in a big counterclockwise circle without moving your head, like this. And then move in a clockwise circle. Next, you're going to hum a common tune, like Happy Birthday, or Happy Days, or Here Again, whatever a common tune is for you. Just 5 seconds worth. Count to 5, up and down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then hum again. That's the whole 9-gamut point. And then you're going to go through the entire tapping sequence again. Not the gamut sequence, just the tapping sequence. That's the whole process for EFT. So let's assume that I have been beset with guilt when I began to move towards or to watch the video of my life as it will be when I've achieved my desired outcome, and suddenly I have all these unpleasant feelings, this anxiety. And oh, by the way, just as an aside, I should have mentioned this earlier. When this anxiety comes up, you may not know what the root emotion is. And if you recall, in one of my previous videos, I did an episode called How to Interrogate Your Subconscious by either using muscle testing or using a pendulum. So you can play 20 questions with your subconscious by saying, okay, the emotion I'm feeling at this point is anger. If you test and you get a weak test, that's not it. The emotion I'm feeling right now is fear. I test, nope, that's not it either. The emotion I'm feeling right now is guilt. And I test and it's strong, bingo. That's what you want to focus on. So once you have that, once you know what the emotion is, you can go back to the beginning, like I just told you, use the neurovascular points if your level of engagement, your SUDS, subjective units of distress scale, is higher than a 2 after holding the neurovasculars, and go to the EFT process, which we're going to do next. So, to stay with our theme, I'm going to use guilt as my demon. I'm going to find a sore spot here and I'm going to rub and say, even though I have all this guilt because I want to be more wealthy, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. Even though I have all this guilt from wanting to be more wealthy, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. Even though I have all this guilt because I want to have more money, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. Now proceed through the tapping sequence. I have this guilt. I feel guilty for wanting more money. I have all this guilt. I have these feelings of guilt. I'm feeling all this guilt. I feel guilty for wanting to be more wealthy. I have this guilt. I'm feeling guilty. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty for wanting to be more wealthy. I have all these guilty feelings. I have all this guilt. I have all this guilt. I feel guilty for wanting to be more wealthy. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty for wanting more money. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty because I want to be more wealthy. I have all this guilt. That's one round. Now, I'm going to tap here, close the eyes, all the while focusing on the emotion you're trying to clear, in this case, guilt. Close the eyes, open the eyes. Hard down to the left, back to center. Hard down to the right, back to center. Big clockwise circle with the eyes. Big clockwise circle with the eyes. Hum. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hum. Now go back to the whole sequence. I have this guilt. I feel guilty. I have these guilty feelings. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty. I have all these guilty feelings. I feel so guilty. I feel guilty about wanting to be more wealthy. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty. I feel guilty about wanting to have more money. I have all this guilt. I feel so guilty. I have all this guilt. 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 Now stop. Take a deep breath. You will feel much more settled after you do this. Right after you finish doing this, re-rate your subjective units of distress, 1 to 10. If it is still higher than a 2, go back through and tap through the sequence again. You don't have to do the gamut process necessarily, but if you want to, please go ahead and do so. After you've gone through the tapping again, re-rate. Keep rating until it's below a 2. What can happen, what might happen, is that what you started working on in the beginning morphs into something else. We started working on guilt. And as we tap through guilt, that emotion may change to anger or to resentment or whatever. Who knows why? These are emotions, and emotions are not logical. So when you feel it, don't question it. Just go through the process of clearing it. If you keep, or I should say, when you continue to do this, when you are persistent in your determination to clear these personal demons away, you will be successful. And you will feel like you're about 10 pounds lighter, because these things weigh us down. I could do an entire show just on that. But for now, this is sufficient. This is a very powerful process, and I want to caution you, when you are working on these emotional demons, these personal demons that are deeply rooted, when you go through this process, its completion, you may feel washed out, like you need to go lay down and take a nap. Please honor that if you can. This process moves an enormous amount of your body's energy. Much of the energy we experience is noise, unfortunately, and that noise is in the form of these personal demons. So when you clear them, you may feel like you've just gone through a really deep chiropractic adjustment or an acupuncture treatment. Just want to take a nap. Go do that. As I said, this process is very powerful, and I'd like you to be able to use this to free yourself from all these things that keep us from achieving the things that could make us even greater than we are. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. And as always, until we meet again, make miracles an ordinary part of your life. And bye for now.